Well, I also spoke to the former business secretary, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, who served in the cabinet.
It's time to hear Jacob Rees-Mogg's views on Suella Braverman's sacking and David Cameron's appointment to the cabinet from an interview on Channel 4 News.
Under Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, and is now a presenter on GB News. I began by asking him what he made of the cabinet reshuffle.
Well, I think getting rid of Suella is a mistake because Suella had become very clearly identified in the public mind as somebody who wanted to deal with the immigration problem and somebody who was tough on law and order.
What is this public mind? Constantly people like Mogg talk of public minds and the will of the people and the British people, but there's a load of people who think differently to the views he puts forward here. For example, a lot of people think Braverman is unhinged.
And the government now looks as if it isn't so interested in the immigration problem and isn't so tough on law and order. I therefore think that is an error for a Conservative government.
Again, Braverman was unhinged. Her approach was just to stir things up, to gain media coverage, to then shore up her leadership bid.
Overall, though, this feels like a government tacking very firmly to the centre in the sort of Cameroon history. You happy with that?
Well, I think it's very interesting bringing back David Cameron himself, and striking actually, because as you saw him go into Downing Street, David Cameron looks very prime ministerial, doesn't he?
Yeah, because he was a prime minister, but I think Mogg's saying he actually looks competent, which is pretty easy to do considering the dross we've had in the cabinet over the last 4 years, and that includes Mogg.
And if I were the Prime Minister, I'd be worried about being overshadowed on the world stage. David Cameron may be the person people want to talk to rather than the Prime Minister. So that's an interesting and in some ways a brave move.
Listen to him, stirring it up.
To put somebody in who has been Prime Minister before, and of course in our history, people have gone back to being Prime Minister again.
So it'll make Rishi Sunak look weak?
Even weaker, you mean?
Not in control?
I think
who's the real Prime Minister?
Who's the real Prime Minister?
Yes.
I mean, I think David Cameron looks a very strong Prime Ministerial figure in the interviews he's done today. He's very good at the communication side of politics. That was one of his great strengths as Prime Minister.
Oh, I hate Cameron so much.
You don't like his politics, do you? I mean, are you happy with the political direction of this reshuffle?
Well, I think the political direction of this reshuffle is an error.
Of course he does. He wants more culture wars.
That if you look at what people voted for in 2019, they voted for a party, actually right the way back to 2010, that would deal with migration and be tough on law and order.
Is that really what people voted for? Just those two things? I don't think so.
That's what Suella was doing, and the Prime Minister sacked her for following government policy.
He sacked her for being a rogue agent, saying and doing things that constantly took the focus from the talking points Rishi was trying to establish.
Now, she may have been infelicitous in some of the phrases she used, but that is, I think, the message that people will get.
What planet is Mogg on? For once, Rishi has done something half competent.
And do you think it therefore makes it even less likely that the Conservative Party will win the next election?
I haven't spoken to a Conservative Member of Parliament today who is optimistic about our prospects.
Click here for Suella gets sacked.